Hello and welcome. This is Business Week coming to you from our studios here in Lagos, the nation's commercial capital. I am Frank Omalape. Here's what's coming up on the program in a moment. Federal government proposes 26.01 trillion naira budget expenditures for 2024. Plus, Nigeria's headline inflation rate increases to 26.72% in September as food price rises to 30.64% on a year-on-year basis. So, what are the causes or cost factors for the continuous rise of inflation, and what can be done to mitigate the impact on livelihood and businesses? But that's our major talking point on the program today. And finally, President Bola Tinubu launches renew home conditional cash transfer for 15 million households. Well, these are some of the biggest stories of the week, and we'll be focusing on this. Thank you for joining us. We begin from the nation's capital, where this week's Federal Executive Council meeting chaired by President Bola Tinubu deliberated on the 2024 to 2026 medium-term expenditure framework and fiscal strategy paper that will soon be sent to the National Assembly ahead of next year's budget presentation to provide an outlook for the economy. The President also approved a 30-day timeline to begin the implementation of agreement reached between the federal government and organized labor in the country. TVC News State House correspondent Femi Akonde reports.
The deliberations of the Federal Executive Council was largely on issues on the economy, with how to stimulate growth and development. A memo was considered and approved on the medium-term expenditure framework and fiscal strategy paper from 2024 to 2026, with an aggregate expenditure of 26.01 trillion naira and some other assumptions based on current economic realities.
So this Fiscal Responsibility Act is for the years 2024 to 2026. The $700 reference price assumes our optimism. The assumptions include oil price benchmark.
The coordinating minister of the economy disclosed that President Tinubu's recent economic reforms is already getting positive attention from the international community, with the latest being a $1.5 billion concessional financing from the World Bank and another $80 million from the Africa Development Bank to finance the Ekiti Knowledge Zone project.
Nigeria has been able to make the kind of macroeconomic moves, has been able to take the tough decisions to restore balance in the economy, in the government's finances, that has warranted support, that has gendered and that has elicited even support from the multilateral development banks.
The Ministry of Works got an approval to carry on with the construction of some abandoned roads and bridges across the country, and also complete projects inherited from the previous administration. For the Ministry of Industry, Trade and Investment, President Tinubu approved the establishment of the Presidential Council on Industrial Revolution, made up of 10 subcommittees that are critical to the revival of the economy.
What the committees will do will be to sit down and look at all the policies within different ministries, as well as the Ministry of Industry, Trade and Investment. We have a lot of policies, frameworks and guidelines that should help to revitalize the industries within these different ministries and agencies.
It seems this time the tension between the federal government and labor unions in the country might be reduced, as the Federal Executive Council seems to have kept its own end of the bargain by approving the implementation of agreements reached with organized labor, with a caveat of an evidence of implementation within 30 days.
We analyze on each and every aspect of the agreement, and to show the genuineness and also the provide for harmonious and a good industrial relationship. And that was why it was presented and it was approved for implementation.
This Federal Executive Council meeting, which is the second in the life of President Tinubu's administration, will now be held on Mondays, and it will only be when there are important memos to be considered. Femi Akonde, TVC News, Abuja.
And still in the nation's capital, President Bola Tinubu has launched the Renew Hope Conditional Cash Transfer Scale-Up, which is targeted at giving cash to the poor and vulnerable in the country that have been captured on the social register and their identity verified. The launch of this conditional cash transfer domicile in the Ministry of Humanitarian Affairs and Poverty Development was done by the Secretary to the Government of the Federation, Senator George Akume, on behalf of President Bola Tinubu. Femi Akonde tells us more.
The International Day for the Eradication of Poverty is commemorated with the launch of the Renewed Hope Conditional Cash Transfer Scale-Up that will benefit about 61 million Nigerians. President Bola Tinubu's administration officially commenced the disbursement of 25,000 naira each to 15 million households for the next 3 months. Minister of Humanitarian Affairs and Poverty Alleviation has committed to ensuring this conditional cash transfer directly gets to the poor.
15 million households will be receiving 75,000 naira over a space of 3 months. This equates to about 61 million Nigerians directly.
President Tinubu says this cash transfer is an immediate intervention to cushion the effect of fuel subsidy removal. There are already plans to expand the social register and capture Nigerians living below the poverty line, which, according to the World Bank, 71 million Nigerians are extremely poor.
The government is working to develop and deploy several more solutions and interventions to help Nigerians of all walks of life. These include A, investment of 100 billion to purchase 3,000 units of 20-seater compressed natural gas powered buses.
In this particular case, the audit trail is there. The mechanism that is going to be used is one that is biometric. It is proven. You will be able to name every single person that has received those funds.
Nigeria's development partners are optimistic that this cash transfer scheme is well intended and will relieve pains caused by the removal of fuel subsidy.
You know, it's understandable that taking such a move would require real political courage. And His Excellency, the President, was willing to take that. And that's where the renewed hope in terms of a better future for Nigeria, it starts there, because otherwise the government would not be able to afford the many services, what it owes to the Nigerian people.
Hopefully, the scale-up of the Renewed Hope Conditional Cash Transfer will lift millions of Nigerians out of poverty. As the federal government says, in the coming days, there will be a rollout of more plans and programs targeted at improving the fortunes of the poor and vulnerable in the country. Femi Akonde, TVC News, Abuja.
And away from there now, latest data from the UK's Office for National Statistics shows that food prices saw the first monthly fall in 2 years in September, but fuel prices rose sharply, while headline inflation rate for the month under review held steady at 6.7%, ending a run of 3 consecutive monthly falls. The price of milk, cheese and eggs all decreased, easing the pressure and supermarket tills, but petrol increased by 5.1 pence per litre, hitting drivers at the pumps. However, a chief economist, Mr. Grant Fixner, says many countries have been either periods lately of no change or in some cases of actual increases in headline rate before they started to resume their falls. These and many more were some of the biggest stories in the business week. Let's take a break. Thank you for staying with us. This is Business Week, broadcasting from our studios here in Lagos, the nation's commercial capital. Now, let's tell you that the National Bureau of Statistics new data says Nigeria's headline inflation rate increased to 26.72% in September 2023. The Bureau disclosed this in its Consumer Price Index and Inflation Report for September released on Monday in Abuja. According to the report, the figures is 0.92% point higher compared to 25.80% recorded in August 2023. On a year-on-year basis, the headline inflation rate in September was 5.94% higher than the rate recorded in September 2022 at 20.77%. The report said the food inflation rate in September increased to 30.64% on a year-on-year basis, which was 7.3% higher compared to the rate recorded in September 2022 at 23.34%. That's the report from the National Bureau of Statistics. So let's get talking. I've been joined by Head of Fixed Income Market, Chapel Hill Denham, Oladipo Ajayi. Thank you for joining us. Nigeria's headline inflation rate jumped to 26.72% in September. If you also take a look at the food inflation as well, pegged at 30.64% on a year-on-year basis. Let me ask you, was this expected given various interventions of both fiscal and monetary authorities?
I think what I would say about the inflation figure that came out was that it was surprising. And what I mean by surprising is that the market expectation, as a consensus expectation, that was 27.10. But when the data was released, and we saw that it was down 26.72. So it actually brought a lot of questions into mind that are we getting to a level where we should start thinking inflation will start moderating, or is this just a one-off thing that actually happened? But for me, what I've seen is that we cannot make a call with just the September inflation figure. We still need to wait for like another 2 months to be able to actually make a call to see whether truly we have gotten to that trough where we should expect inflation to start moderating. But when you look at that figure, you will see that the headline inflation did not increase month on month when you compare to the month of August. For the month of September, it actually increased by 2.10 compared to the 3.18 that we saw in August. And also, when you look at food inflation as well, food inflation also increased by about 2.45 compared to 3.87 that we saw in the month of August. And that's one of the reasons why I said that is it that we are getting to a level where we should start expecting more like a downward turn? But I don't think we are fully gotten there. We still need to see more data for like two months to be able to actually make that decision or around that fact.
Mr. Oladipo, let's break it down now. The headline inflation figure includes inflation in a basket of goods that include commodities like food and energy, while food and energy prices are exempted from core inflation when calculated. So do you think we have a manageable inflationary environment in our hand if you take away food and energy from this report?
I won't say that because that has been the norm. So it's not something that we just wake up to say, oh, let's now change the way it's being computed because of the fact that we are currently under huge inflationary pressure regime. And I wouldn't want to say that. That's been more like the metrics that we use in the computation. And what we don't actually consider in the core inflation is that we don't consider volatile. And I understand why you don't consider volatile, because volatile commodity or energy could actually distort the real picture. Imagine a situation whereby you have a particular indices that, okay, maybe in the month of January is trading at 100 naira, and suddenly in the month of February is already at 20 naira, and in the month of March is at 180. So volatile energy, volatile commodities are not actually considered in the core inflation. So that has been the norm. So it will be unfair of me to actually mention that it's been managed based on that.
Now, let's talk about food inflation in particular, which is currently at 30.64%. Despite the various interventions from the past administration and this government in agri sector, food prices have continued to rise unabated. So what would you consider as the major factor impacting the price rise?
For farmers, there are a lot of things that we need to look at. First, we need to look at the issue of insecurity. This is actually very, very essential. And farmers are finding it very difficult to actually access their farm. They are finding it very difficult to actually go to farm to harvest. They are finding it very difficult to go to farm to actually plant their seeds. So this is one key thing that I feel is actually affecting, leading to the high food inflation. And aside that, also we also need to look at the change in the global warming issue. Because if you remember vividly, sometimes last year, I think about this time last year, the past administration needs to actually quickly embark on raising emergent supplementary budget so as to be able to actually assist farmers that were badly affected by flood around Jigawa, Bauchi, and major part of the north. And same things are already playing out as well. And so I think the government need to be proactive and not reactive when it comes to issues like this. Of course, I know that the current president actually mentioned saddled the governor of Kogi State to actually work around that. But I don't think it's something that you have to just leave on the table. It's something that needs emergency attention, and it's something that needs daily updates so as to be able to actually prevent reoccurrence of what we saw last year. So flood is also another factor that's actually affecting farmers. And also at the end of the day, leading to the high food prices. Another thing also that we also need to also factor in is the transportation of goods from farmland to the markets. A lot of farmers are finding it very difficult to actually transport goods. There are times that you will see on national TVs where you will see issues mentioned where people actually transporting food from maybe from the north to somewhere down south here, spending close to 10 days on the road due to bad infrastructure. So around this also, we need to actually quickly find a way and find a lasting solution to this. I think we need to have gone beyond the level of actually transporting food with trucks. We should have gone into a level where we can easily transport food with train or through the rail line. And I feel that that's also something that we need to quickly actually give urgent attention. And also another thing that we'll say finally around that is the issue of finance. I think the government needs to actually create a board, like commodity board. And their duty will be, their main responsibility will be to actually be off-taker of this product from farmers. It takes close to 60 days between when the farmers have completed the harvest and when they're actually getting cash for the product. So I think when the government creates more like commodity board, and their responsibility will be to be off-takers for some of those products. So what this will do to farmers is that they get immediate funding. And what that will do to them is that they can quickly go back to the farm. And actually, so at the end of the day, we might end up having better turnaround time for most product lines that does not have, they are not seasonal. So I think if we can actually find a way to actually resolve these four issues, I think to a great extent, it will actually help to actually reduce the price of products in the markets.
Mr. Oladipo, let me also ask you this question. There are harvest seasons in Nigeria. We have, season for yam, for cassava, for planting, different kind of season. So do you think that the harvest season is also critical in terms of what determines the prices of these commodities in the market?
Even to some extent, one of the view of most analysts around this time is that could it be that because we are currently in harvest season, could that be the reason why food inflation did not actually increase more than what we saw in tandem with what we saw in the month of August? Harvest season is very critical, and what we have seen based on precedents is that during harvest season, you tend to see inflation figure drop, almost especially you tend to see food inflation actually moderate. But what we are seeing in this season is that we didn't see headline inflation drop, and we didn't see that great impact on food inflation. But one thing that we noticed is that food inflation did not actually increase as much as I would have expected because of the peculiarities of the time. So harvest time is a great time to actually help to actually cushion the effect of inflationary pressure. But based on what we are currently combating in this country, we are not seeing the full effect currently in the headline inflation.
All right, let's move away from food market or commodities now and look at some specific sectors of the economy. Are there specific sectors or industry that have been hit harder by inflation? And if so, what impact is this having on those businesses and customers? Especially, how do you think businesses can mitigate the impact of inflation on their operations?
Inflation generally is affecting mostly even manufacturing companies. Because it gets to a level that you find it very difficult to transfer the full prices to your consumers, and as a result of that, what that will mean is that you have to pay with your margin, and I think that is mostly what is happening to most manufacturing companies as we speak. And also at the same time, the current FX crisis is not helping matters because most of these manufacturers they will have to consider the cost of input, and that will determine the output price of most of their commodity. And at the end of the day, if you cannot actually fully transfer all the cost to your final consumer, what it will mean to you is that your time in the market may be short-lived. Because it means that you are even finding it very difficult to actually break even. And that's one of the reasons why I feel that the government needs to actually rise up urgently to actually find a way to actually create a lasting solution for the current FX crisis in the market, because this is actually also featuring directly or indirectly into inflationary pressure that we currently see in the market.
Let's wrap it up now. What role do you think, or what role do external factors such as global economic trends and geopolitical issues play in Nigeria's inflation rate, and how can these be managed over time?
If you look at Nigeria generally, and we are not outside the global terrain, and so what that simply means is that whatever is happening in the global world, one way or the other, actually affects our economy. And I think from the beginning of last year till now, we've been talking about the crisis between Russia and Ukraine, and how that has been affecting the market and also affecting the supply of commodity to the country. And at the same time, also, we are looking at, when you look at the current crisis in the Middle East between Israel and Palestine, one way or the other, it's two-sided for a country like Nigeria that actually produce oil. But we also need to know that when the price of oil goes up, it also means that most of the manufacturing company may need to actually suffer more, because it will actually increase the price of diesel, which is key to production in our terrain. So if you look at this generally, you find out that we are not totally insulated for the global happening. But one thing that I also need to actually look at is the fact that Nigeria and Egypt is about the two countries that has been seeing this consistent upward movement in inflationary figure. Most African countries will started seeing inflation figure moderating. We saw that happen in Ghana, we saw that in Kenya, we saw that in some other African countries. And also, if you look at the global economy generally, even the United States, we saw how the inflation figure peaked at north of 8%, and currently is already moderating to very close to their benchmark level, which is 2%, but now it's around 4% levels. So when you look at that, it means that aside the global factor, there are also the domestic factor that's actually affecting, leading to the problem that we are going through in Nigeria. So the global factor for me, I would say that generally the global world has actually waned that off. So I expect by now Nigeria to at least surmount that. But because we have our own domestic issue, and that's one of the reasons why we'll be continuing to see that upward movement in prices of inputs to production. And let's say, just like what I mentioned earlier on, we look at FX issue. FX issue between the month of August and now, we've seen FX in the parallel market depreciated by over 25%. And when you look at when your currency is implementing in that dimension, to a great extent, it will actually filter to your inflation figure because of imported inflation, and even when you're not talking about a country like Nigeria, where you will see like about 10 ships coming into the country, filled up, and you will see about 9 ships leaving the country empty. So what that simply means that we are more of a consumer than producer. So as a result of that, it means that we will be badly affected by whatever is happening around FX when it's not favorable to the country. So I feel that aside the global issue, our own domestic issue is the key thing that's actually leading to what we're actually going through.
Well, thank you so much for your time. We've been speaking with Mr. Oladipo Ajayi, who is the head fixed income market at Chapel Hill Dinner. Thank you for your time on the program.
You're most welcome, bro. You're most welcome.
Well, you're watching Business Week, coming to you from our studios here. So let's wrap it up now. But let's tell you that Finnish telecoms giant Nokia says it will cut up to 14,000 jobs as part of a cost reduction plan following a plunge in third quarter earnings. The telecommunications giant said it will reduce its cost base and increase operation efficiency to address the challenging market environment. The company made the announcement as it reported a 20% drop in sales between July and September and blamed slowing demand for 5G equipment in North America. Nokia currently has 86,000 employees around the world and has laid off thousands of jobs since 2015. Earlier this year, Nokia's rival Ericsson announced plans to lay off 8,500 employees, also as part of a cost-cutting plan. Well, it's a wrap on today's edition of Business Week. Join us next week for another interesting episode of the program. Thank you for staying with us. I am Frank Omalape. I'll see you again.